Hello, my lofas. Welcome to Koviki Talk. My name is Dacia, also known as AfroTeine. I am the host of the Real Tella podcast, and I'm also your friendly auntie on the interwebs. Anytime you see me on IG or TikTok or Facebook, I am there. I'm probably doing something funny or being, faikakala. And for today's session, I have one of my nearest and dearest friends, the cultured queen. She is not only just an amazing person, she's an artist, she's a chef, she is an overall creative, loving mother, caring person, also works in the healthcare field. And so she's the perfect person to have this conversation about just Koviki and just our culture, how we're dealing with it, how we're going to navigate around it, what we've seen since COVID. And Tisha, don't let me talk over you. Please introduce yourself and say hello to the wonderful people watching us today.
Hi, my name is Tisha. My art name is TishaInk. I'm a visual artist. I'm a chef. I'm a photography lover, a mom of boys. I only like boys because I can't do girls or daughters or anything like that. I'm also, as you can tell by my very quiet, demure face and personality, that I'm very, very loud. Yes. Anyways, I reside in the Bay Area, San Jose specifically. I work in geriatric care for seniors, hospice, end of life services. Um, yeah, so this is just definitely a passion of mine with everything we've been going through this few years with COVID affecting my family directly. See family members who have passed away, nieces and nephews who have been orphaned by this. It's really, really, I think it was, in the beginning, I think nobody thought it was as serious as it was going to become. And I think that there's so much that it's taught us, either resilience or just blind, willful ignorance. So it's sad to see, but it's a necessary conversation to have so that we make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I thank you so much, Tisha, and we welcome you here. Again, I thank you for being here with us to not only just share with us your stories, but just letting us be in your presence. There is no place that I am ever with Tisha that she doesn't light up a room. And so I'm happy that you mentioned that line about the willful ignorance. I think in our community, especially the Pacifica community, when COVID first emerged, we weren't as proactive in trying to prevent catching COVID or spreading COVID. Once, because it was just a lot of information out there that was conflicting, right? It was just like, oh, kids can't catch it, or it's just a cold, it's not that serious. And then it began really serious when we got to see a procession of funerals every week, loved ones that we had to bury. And I teared up at that because it was just like, wow, in the 3 years that we spent isolated, or at least trying to cope.
Right. And I think we also have this, I don't know, it's a self-insulating confidence that we have, that things like this don't happen to us. Things like this don't happen to us because we're different and we're not built like them. And so we just go about our way thinking, oh, we're not going to get sick like that. And then things really hit home when people really do get sick. And even then, I found that family members who did pass, the doctors tell the family they had it and they passed, and there's still this
disbelief.
Yes. But how come? Why? Well, I had it too, but nothing happened to me like that. And so I think it's really necessary to educate yourselves, really, because I had a similar experience this past year, and they misdiagnosed me, and they thought I had COVID, but I didn't. But they gave me all the wrong medication. But thinking I work in this field, I trust these healthcare professionals. Like I trust, and my youngest son has asthma. So I've been taking him to the doctors and the emergency rooms ever since he was little. And whenever the doctor says something, you just assume
Right. That they're
they've
right.
been to school for years and they know what they're doing. And I would, the doctor would say, oh, you need to admit him. And I would say, okay, sure. I'll come and stay in the hospital with him for days at a time. But then now you realize you really have to be vigilant about your own health. And you need to know what you want, really, because another thing I did not know, and my mom worked in the healthcare industry for years, and she told me you can say no. Like, you have the right to say no. When you're offered these options, you can literally say, I'm not interested. I don't want to do that. And I think we just assume, because we're such trusting people, that, oh, they're here to take care of me. Yes, sure. The doctor says, do this. Okay, sure. But there's a fine balance in between ignorance and education. And I think education is what we really need to learn your bodies, learn yourself, what you're allergic to, what you need, what helps you, because it's really important, especially when it gets down to the wire like that, And I think it would be amazing if we could do, if we can do lessons in language and cultural arts and stuff, it would be great if we could do lessons in what an advanced directive is. Or are you prepared for the end, really? Or are you just going to leave it to family to figure that out when it gets there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, honestly, it's such an important, and don't ever think that that's for old people. I was 41 when this happened, and I was thinking, and my kids were visiting me in the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 3 months straight.
Wow. And so they misdiagnosed you. That's what happened.
They misdiagnosed me, gave me wrong medication, made me sicker. Then different doctors came in, all interns. Nobody gave me a specialist. So I go into the hospital fine. I drive there and I walk in the hospital, and I go in for a regular, I think it was a ultrasound. That's it. And I come home in a wheelchair on oxygen with a walker, because I couldn't walk and I couldn't stand and I couldn't do anything. My family had to come down from Seattle to take care of me. My sisters, got together, bought all my medical equipment. It was crazy. People just couldn't believe it, because they know me before, and then they see me after, and they're like, what happened? And it was all a misdiagnosis. And then now I've been approached already by lawyers. There's a class action lawsuit against the hospital, because almost 30 people the first week I went in have passed away.
Wow. Which hospital was this, Tisha?
Not allowed to say.
Oh, okay. Never mind. But it is a hospital in the Bay Area, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to put you in any legal trouble, but I want to say that I'm happy that you're here. And you are perfectly correct. We do, as people who are from the South Pacific, we are very trusting of healthcare professionals because that's what we're taught when we're a kid, right? It was
Yeah.
like the doctor says do this, you do that. We kind of look at it as like a honored profession,
Respect.
like teachers, right? We believe our teachers, we believe our doctors. But a good point that Tisha brought up, everyone, is education is key. And with the right education, you can advocate for yourself when you go into these health fields. Everything the doctor says is, because they work in the hospital day in day out, they've seen patterns, they see things, and they'll make their best suggestion. But you can be an active participant in your healing as well. And by reading books, by going to your local websites, by even scheduling an appointment and sitting down with your doctor and actually having the conversation with your doctor, it is okay to ask questions. And if your doctor doesn't make you feel safe to ask questions, you can switch doctors and find somebody that values you that much. And then speaking about doctors in the health profession, could you dive a little bit more, Tisha, into your work as a geriatric professional?
So I do a lot of caregiving, and my specialty is really in geriatric hospice, which is senior end of life services. And I have seen everything.
Wow.
I have, yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting. Family dynamics come into account. I think that is the most stressful part, is family dynamics. The client and the patient themselves are content with their lives, where they're at. And they make these decisions way before we get to that point, of course. That's why I'm there. But it's the family dynamics, the bickering, the fighting, the politics, the money, that is really the most stressful. And I always, for my patients, I tell them that I'm only here for you, and you are the only one I care about.
Yeah.
I don't care about any of this stuff. This stuff has nothing to do with me. I'm not in it. I'm here for you. And so that's specific. And I think that's why I've been doing it so long. I've even been in families for years. So I took care of a couple in Saratoga. I was with them for 8 years. Took care of the wife, she died. Took care of the husband, he died. I went to his sister, she died. Then a cousin, then he died. So I've been
Wow.
around a lot with a lot of families because they've known me so long. And they know that I advocate for them and not the and these are not, these are people who have a lot of money. So the families get really tied into, the pro, the whole engine of it all. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
well,
And I have to, and they know that I stand my ground because they've seen me do it to their brother. And I say, okay, if you guys want to do that, that's great. You can go in the other room. We're not doing that here, not in front of me. Or you can wait till I leave, and then you can do all of this. And so I've done that. Yeah. And then I've even taken people to Oregon. I've had families who have asked me, because Oregon has, what's the word? It's a right to die state.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they allow the person to choose whether or not they want to continue or
so I've had
transition.
People call me to ask me to accompany them there and to be there and hold a hand at the end, because families don't want to get involved. Okay. And they want to know that their loved one is with someone safe. So I've done that, of course you have hospice and a nurse there to administer all the medication and stuff like that. But they just want someone to be there by their loved one's side to hold their hand. So I've done that many times.
That is, in my studies as a social worker, I always looked at hospice as a very honorable profession to be in, but very tough. It's very tough on the soul to watch people transition from the living and then passing on.
Yeah.
How has COVID affected how you do your job? Has it made it more difficult for these folks to transition, or how is it for you, and how is it for your patients?
I noticed that the patients with after COVID, post COVID, it's become very hard for families to trust because of miscommunication with healthcare professionals about what COVID really did and how it, don't do this and don't do that and wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. And so I think a lot of families have developed a mistrust towards the healthcare
Mm.
industry because of COVID. So they don't trust everything the doctor says about their family members,
Mm-hmm.
oh, your dad needs a test here, or your dad needs this, and but does he really, that kind of thing. But with the seniors themselves, because my other specialty really is dementia, and with dementia, it's very how do you explain it? It's like the person doesn't know, and so if
Right.
the person doesn't know, what are you going to do? What do you want? Like, you just have to. So a lot of these people make these plans before, as soon as they get diagnosed. This is what I want done. I want this care. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want to be drugged up, or I want to be alive as long as possible, stuff like that. So these people know already, they're on their path. They're going to have dementia, and they'll usually end up with a severe form at the end, right?
Okay.
You forget your name, you forget everything. And usually I find memory, they cling on to the most joyful memories.
Mm.
Yeah, because I've taken care of patients, and right at the end, it's so beautiful because I took care of a lady who used to teach Shirley Temple how to play the piano.
What?
Yes.
That.
And right at the end, she thought she was in her lesson teaching Shirley Temple.
Wow.
And she would talk like that. And we're like sitting in front of the TV, and she would say, "No, honey, don't do," and so I would just go along. I'm like, "Oh, you're such a great teacher." But I find that a lot of them, the greatest memories are right there at the end. And it's a memory that they probably feel the most safest, so comforting, and it's beautiful, and they hold on to that, you know? And when they're agitated or anxious, that's when their sad memories come in, because that's when they cry and they're upset and they're angry. But I find like dementia is very different.
Yeah, it
Dementia
is.
affects the family more than it affects the person with dementia.
Well,
The
because
person
they
with
don't
dementia,
realize it. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
a persistent cycle of loss of memory, but then it gets what people don't know about dementia and even Alzheimer's is like you don't just forget memories, you forget how to function. You forget how
yes,
to chew, you forget how to
cognitive,
breathe, things
yes,
like that. You will deteriorate.
yeah.
But
Yep.
in terms of your job, how important is it for you to make sure that you're vaccinated? Because it seems like you're doing a lot of hand holding, a lot of close work. Like,
Oh,
how
yeah.
do you protect yourself?
Well, because of also my line of work, common sense. I want to be vaccinated. I don't want to, and I want to make sure, I respect your right not to be vaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, that's fine. But I'm going to be because I have children, and I'm going to my work, my children. I'm always in the middle of stuff. So yeah.
Hmm. And
So
how important is it for you to stay on up to date on your boosters? I know for me, because I'm working from home, like I'm vaccinated, but I know that like when travel opens up, I know I want to get my boosters because I'm thinking about being on cruises. I've never been on one before, but it's very crowded.
yeah.
And
Well,
I
I work
like
for an agency, so I
okay,
have. So I keep up with all my stuff. And
okay.
then my youngest son has asthma, so I have to. And so all my kids are vaccinated and boosted and everything. Yeah. So we have to, keep it up. It's not it's not an issue. I'm not going to be like anti-vaxxer stuff. I'm fine with it. Doesn't bother me.
Mhm.
If you don't want to, that doesn't bother me either. That's fine. Like, I'm not picky about stuff like that. But for me personally, I want to make sure I'm fine. That's
No,
all.
that's great. I'm glad that you have that kind of approach. I think at the beginning of COVID, I was just like, how dare you not, protect yourself as much as possible? Because even if you do not agree with getting vaccinated, I there were people that were struggling to wear a mask, to wash their hands, to stay 6 feet apart.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it was those people that ended up, experiencing some hardship when it came to their health, but they learned and they adapted. And I understand people's kind of hesitance or
Right.
hesitancy in believing things when it comes from the government. There's so many conflicting information. Like you mentioned, the family that you would take care of, they would develop some mistrust because they're hearing one thing from the home, one thing from the
Yeah.
government, one thing on social media, and all of this confusion. You being a Fijian mother to grown Fijian boys, how do you deal with that misinformation? How do you guide them in a healthy way when it comes to COVID?
My sons or work wise?
You with your sons and your
Oh,
family.
my sons. First of all, my boys are not babies. They're big. I mean, they're man
Yeah.
children, right? So I told them, if you want to have if you want to get the vaccination, that's fine. If you don't want to, I respect your right. It's fine with me. Like, because they're not like they're 5. We're
Hmm.
not gonna go get the chicken pox vaccine. That you're gonna get that, blah blah blah. But they were old enough, and I said, if you want to get it, you can get it. If you don't want it, you don't have to get it. It's up to you. You
And
know.
that's isn't that very different? Because in our Pacifica communities, what our parents say goes, and it's not very
No.
often that parents would sit their children down and say, "You have a choice in this medical
Oh yeah.
procedure."
No. My boys and I have a different relationship. They know they're allowed to get whatever they want. Yeah. I have a 17-year-old asking for tattoos right now. I said, yeah. I said, sure. I said, yeah, as long as you get mommy's name tattooed on your forehead, you can get any tattoo you want. He goes, oh my gosh, mom, no. I was like, yeah. I said, just remember, everything you do, your life decisions in the future depends
Mhm.
on what you do now because you're so young. That's all. That's my only advice I give him.
That's
Every
awesome.
Yeah, I tell him you can do
I'm glad you can
anything you
hold that
want.
space.
Yeah, I say you can do anything you want. Just remember, don't call your mama because I ain't coming to get you or save you. Yeah. So
So
my
for
business.
your children, how has COVID or the emergence of COVID in their yes, they're not babies, but they're still young. How has COVID emerging into their young lives affected their lives?
Well, I noticed my oldest son he's very similar to me. He's very social and outgoing and stuff.
Hmm.
But COVID sort of changed it a little. He couldn't be so social anymore. So a lot of stuff, he had to, his group got smaller and smaller, and he got a bit, uh, he just didn't have a bigger group of friends to, go hang out,
Mm.
here, there, and everywhere. The younger one, it was a lot of it is sports because he's the jock. So sports, football, baseball, basketball, rugby, everything on track and field, everything under the sun just really shrunk. And so I got freaking weight sets in my house, and it's a gym. I'm like, I'm about to rent this house because he's in the thing pumping iron and stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is going? And because he couldn't go out so much, and he's
Mhm.
the asthmatic one that we all worry about. And then he's a swim instructor for
Wow.
yeah, so he teaches kids to swim at the local aquatic center. So he really he's very active, and so it really changed his sporting life.
Okay.
Um,
So it sounds like COVID kind of took this like widespread, you know, picture of youth where it's like we go everywhere, we do
Yeah.
everything, and kind of shrunk it into these four walls of like, hey, you're here, you can't go out much, you can't
Mm-hmm.
commune much.
Mm-hmm.
How did it affect his schooling for both of
Oh,
your boys?
yeah. And then brothers on the verge of, mm-hmm, you in my space, get out of my space. I'm like,
Yep.
I ain't a millionaire. I'm not Shaquille O'Neal. We don't have a mansion with 45 rooms. You're gonna deal with each other. I said, you just two people come to the islands and deal with 45 cousins in one room. Then you come talk to me,
Yeah.
okay? Yeah, you and you have hot water, a roof over your head, TV, cable. Shut up! Don't even talk. Yeah, yeah. And they're
Yeah,
both like,
I found that like during COVID there was that, right? There were relationships that were exhausted because of the lockdowns and staying indoors and staring at the same person's face
yeah.
over and over and over.
And the
And
personal space,
uh-huh.
yeah, you can't just like, oh, I'm out of here, and then like when slam the door and no, you can't. Where are you gonna go? The bathroom? You can't leave.
Yeah, you could, there's no place to hide.
Yeah.
And I know we were speaking earlier about, some of your siblings had children during
Yes.
COVID. And
Yes.
how's that
So,
been?
so it's very interesting because during COVID, some of my siblings had children, and those children are not developing the same way. They don't have the same social skills that our kids have because they're because they've been so isolated, and then even academically, they're not quite. I even heard statistics that kids are not reading up to grade level, and this is just 3 years of COVID, and kids can't even pronounce words. They're the TV screen is pretty much life right now because school has been on Zoom forever, and I had a nephew of mine. He's little, and we gave him a book for Christmas, and he was swiping the page of the book thinking it was an iPad.
He had never seen a book before?
And we were trying to hold the book, trying to hold the book open, read the words, happy, love, kindness, and he's still trying to swipe it, and then he got angry and he started crying.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's because that's all they did. The parents have to work, right? And kids need to be occupied, and then you don't have no daycare is open. Nothing is available. Nannies can't even come over, right? So your kid is in front of a screen.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's the interaction they had for the first 3 years of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and I think in that mode, especially with Pacifica people being such a communal people, right? We gather everywhere. We gather for church, we gather to eat, we go outside, we play together. Losing that contact and being very fearful during that time with my friends and my family just didn't feel nice. Like I wanted the luxury to just pop over, and I was unable to do so.
Anxiety levels were through the roof. Yeah.
And so like I don't know how to ask, like how do you find joy? How do you find that communal joy during this time, especially being in the healthcare profession and being aware of COVID? Like, are there any precautions that you take with your friends or your family when you guys go out?
So I just pretty much go to work and come home.
Oh, you're like me. I'm a workaholic.
I just go to work and come home. But when I have my art shows, I go to my art shows. If my sons have my oldest son sings, so when he has concerts at school, I go to College San Mateo to watch him. My youngest son, Mr. Jock Extraordinaire, he's senior night football. I want to go do all that stuff. But other than that, it's just pretty much been, just that and home.
Okay.
And when I'm home, I just do everything I do. Cook. Yeah, you know me. I'm always cooking something
Look,
all the time.
if y'all don't know Tisha, she could throw down in the kitchen. I have driven from my house all the way to the depths of San Jose just so I can have some of her shrimp lovely goodness. I'm addicted to her food. I think sometimes she'll sell her food or whatnot. So if you're in the
Yeah, and
area,
I do cookouts on a week.
yes,
Summer, I usually do plate sales and stuff.
it's her curry. Her curry will cure loneliness. Oh my god, it feels like a warm hug from your grandma from the inside out. Oh my gosh, if there ever was witchcraft or magic, it's in her curry. And I've never had the pleasure of having her roti, but I'm pretty sure her roti will bust down. But I have not seen you since COVID, and I miss you. I really do.
Thank you.
And we would.
That's why you need to come home.
I know. I ventured out. I ventured out to Houston, Texas. And in Texas, there is a kind of carelessness in our environment because everyone here is just like, well, you're gonna do what you're gonna do, right? They were still having parties when people were told to go on lockdown, and we got to a point. We got to a point where our hospitals were overrun, and that's when they started learning their lesson. But I think I got a little bit careless a couple of weeks ago. I went out to a hookah bar with friends, and I was just chilling, and then I got sick. But it wasn't. Thank God it wasn't COVID, but it was like a cold that like had me in a chokehold. I was so congested. I lost my sense of taste and sense of smell because I was so congested. But I was like, I utilized my free COVID testing that I keep at home.
Yeah.
I also called into my doctor and asked for a couple tests, and I just started regretting not being as careful as I was when COVID first came out, because it's not just that same strain, right? We have different variants.
There's so many variants now that it's really scary. And now there are these viruses, these babies. I have a niece that just went in the hospital with RSV, and she's a baby.
My goodness.
It's so heartbreaking. I mean, people don't understand what intubation means.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're intubated, it's really bad. It is, they stuff, like, I think it would be great if someone did a visual, because people think it's like, oh, they're just going to bring me back to life.
Explain it to us. Explain it for those folks that don't know what that means.
No, they stick a tube down your throat, like they intubate you, inside your body. And it's huge. And they pump air inside you so it's literally a machine that's letting you live. The minute the electricity goes out, there's an outage of any sort, that's it. So it's really necessary. Like, people don't understand the gravity of everything, Oh, and then another thing I want to bring up too is I think families need to also research what a pulse is or a DNR. Because it's really important to have your wishes on paper in case anything happens. Anything. You can just drive. I'm going to 7-Eleven, drive, someone hits you. Anything happens. You have this piece of paper to let them know what your wishes are. Yeah. And it's a do not resuscitate or a pulse, it's really important.
Or an advance directive. It just basically in the moment you're incapacitated, there is a document that states what you would like to happen when that happens to you.
Right. Because you also don't want to put that on your family. You don't want your family to sit around, I have to wait for Uncle so-and-so to come, or Auntie and so-and-so for us to talk about. No. Decisions need to be made now. So it's really important that everyone invests. And it's all free. It's a piece of paper. You go to your doctor, you have a conversation, and the doctor signs it. The doctor just asks you 4 questions. He signs it, and that's it, and it's done. You know,
Yeah, I think
it's
because
really.
of our culture, I wouldn't want to say hate, but the talk about end of life is very hard, right?
But I
We
don't
all,
understand why, because I don't understand it. I think maybe because we're such a, I mean, we have such a strong faith in ancestral worship. I don't know if people understand what that
Mhm,
means.
mhm.
Like, if your family members die, we honor them so much. So that is ancestral worship. You honor them, you give them that honor, that significant amount of mourning period and all that stuff. And so death is actually a really beautiful thing, because you can't really say you lived until you die,
Mm. Well, you
right?
can't say anything when you
Yeah, you
die.
can't say anything. Like, you can't say I live forever. You have to die, and then you say, oh, I lived a great life. Yeah.
I know in Samoa with our when our loved ones pass away, like we're not like the Western culture in terms of, oh, we bury them in a cemetery. No, they're right outside the house. They're right
Oh,
out the
yeah.
window. So like sometimes, like for Memorial Weekend, I love seeing that in Samoa or in America Samoa, because people come out and they repaint the graves.
Yeah.
They put you know
Yeah,
um,
we put flowers on
bills and stuff.
ours. We put
Yeah.
garlands. We put all the flowers. Yeah, every year we do that. And our house in my ancestral village, my dad's village, it's our house and my grandfather, who's
Hmm.
our high chief, him, his wife, like you open the window, it's right there. And that was the idea. And it was funny because my first visit to the island,
Hmm.
I met my grandfather once, just like physically meeting him.
Yeah.
But when I went to the village for the first time, he had passed away already.
Oh.
But I went to sleep one night and I met him as I was walking in front of the house, sitting on his grave.
Oh, wow.
So I knew that he was right there, and he told me, he said, I was waiting for you to come visit, because I'm the oldest daughter of my dad, and I had been I met my dad much later in life. So it was just a beautiful thing to me to have that ancestral bond, you know, and it was amazing. And that's why my youngest son, I named him after my grandfather.
Oh, and that's another way we honor our ancestors. Because
Yeah,
I know in my
you
family
have to
we
keep
pass
the
down
name.
family names,
Yes,
and that name is never forgotten. We
yes,
pass them down.
yeah. And
That's
that's my
beautiful.
dad. Yeah, that's my dad's name. And then I gave it to my son, and my dad's son, my brother, has that name. So yeah. So the name is so Gideon's name is Gideon Moses Mamafai Noah.
Aw.
I know. I don't know why I picked these names, because everyone who's ever met me always think we're Amish.
Oh my gosh. Oh, because of Gideon.
Well, Caleb and Gideon, hello, how
Oh my
Amish can you
gosh.
get?
They are far from Amish people. Far from
Like, yeah,
Amish.
no, we're not.
And so,
But
like with our culture, like what would you think was the hardest thing about COVID in terms of our culture? Like what are what are some of the characteristics that we kind of have within our groups? Like, or you could speak specifically with Fijians. Like, what was it hard for Fijians to deal with COVID? Did they believe it right away?
so there was interesting actually in Fiji. Um, we had heard that there were people who were very sensible and, like, got vaccinated and,
Mhm.
didn't want to be in groups and all that stuff. And then there was this really weird rebellious group that, and the weirdest part is they were all these like really staunch Christian groups
Oh wow,
that would
wow,
gather in thousands
wow,
because
interesting.
they were going to show God is protecting them.
Oh,
Yes, because they're chosen.
oh, in
Yeah,
that way.
in
Okay.
that way. Yes, and nothing like this would ever happen to them because they were,
Okay.
yes. So it was very bizarre because people were like, yeah, and half the church got sick and they're all in the hospital and they have no medication and what happened? And the pastor's like, well, they sinned. And you're listening to this and you're wondering, what? So it's really weird. It was just like, okay.
That
Like,
is
yeah, it was like a catch-22 kind of thing. Like, you know, don't listen to them, listen to me, come to church. Oh, you got sick? It's because you didn't listen.
yeah, you know what? I was pretty shocked. I follow the Christian faith, but I'm the type of person that loves God, but Christians annoy me. I'm that person. Like his children annoy me. And so in a time where the church could have been very instrumental in getting people help, in getting people to protect themselves, even if they didn't believe in vaccines, to tell them to wash their hands, to stay 6 feet apart,
Mm-hmm.
to wear a mask, they
Sanitize.
they
Just
fell
sanitize.
yeah, they fell into the potholes of like conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
and things like that, and they tend to separate science and God. In my mind,
Oh,
God created science, and when we utilize science, we're utilizing something that was created by God for us to use. Like, I don't think God gave us a brain so that we would just shut it off and not use it ever again. I if you believe God exists and that God created everyone, and amongst those people that God created were scientists and doctors, then what would make you think to separate those two? Doesn't that prove how intelligent God is, how intelligent the design is of God to have a safeguard that not only um, allows us to marvel at his creation, but also protect us when we need them, to have those people that research and find cures for us. Like,
exactly.
yeah, God
Exactly.
empowered scientific minds that created the smallpox vaccine that stopped millions of deaths. God,
Right?
and everyone says, oh well, maybe the next person you give birth to might cure cancer. But yes, and if you're a faith believing person, then you believe that God gave you that child to
Yes.
raise so they could do great things. You know what I'm saying? So
And if you don't
I
believe in science,
yeah.
logic, just, I don't know, logic, wash your hands for anything anyway, for all the time, for the
Yeah.
rest of your life. Just wash your hands. That would be a great way to start.
Yeah, I was just baffled at that because it was just like, instead of perpetuating health and believing, and remember, and I think you have a religious background too. In our churches, they tell you to pray for your leaders, follow your
Mm,
leaders, things like that. But when leaders of the community came out and said, hey, we're at DEF CON 1, everybody needs to stay on their toes, you need to
right,
do these
right.
things, they immediately
Yeah.
fell into disbelief. So, have you ever had like these conversations with your kids or even with your patients? Like, have you had COVID conversations? um
Well, a lot of the seniors, yeah, the
uh-huh.
family, yeah, they always want to know, what's your experience with COVID, especially dealing with seniors and stuff like that. But a lot of it is it's the same exact same idea. There's a
Hmm.
bunch of the family that don't want to be vaccinated. They can come around, hug, kiss, touch everything in the house, don't care about how you feel. And then, and they're usually the ones that are like, you work for us, you listen
Wow.
to us. Yeah, that really weird. Yeah. And then you have the ones who are really cautious and really, I don't want to come and visit. Please, I hope you understand. I'd love to visit my dad, but I can't come because, and I totally understand that. That makes
Mhm.
a lot of sense. You're young, you're out in public a lot. You don't want to bring germs or whatever to come visit your parents. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, but there's, all I can do is I have to respect the boundaries. And that is why I'm vaccinated. And I take care of it. Because that's all you can control at that point, right? You can only control your space and you, nothing else. And just
Yeah.
like you don't want anyone to tell you what to do, I can't tell anyone what to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
except for my sons. But
I think that's what those are one of the lessons that came out of our community when dealing with COVID is like you have to know yourself. You have to know the lines that you're not willing to cross, and you have to be able to protect yourself in terms of health. It's gonna be your choice. But like you said with your boys, like, hey, if you want it or not, you still have to deal with the consequences of those decisions as they come up. What do you think are some of the lessons that came out of dealing or that is still coming out of dealing with COVID in our community or with the Fijian community?
the Fijian community, I think the saddest part is the amount of death.
Mm,
But so many of them did not believe in the vaccine. They just didn't take it, thought it was whatever, that doesn't affect us. We're not, like I said, we're not built like that. We're islanders and we're different and we're special, and and I was like, we're not robots.
right.
Like, what do you? Yeah. And so it was really heartbreaking because we actually lost our family member, um,
Mm.
and they lived upstairs, and she went to bed with her kids in bed and didn't wake up.
Oh my goodness.
And it was so heartbreaking. And the kids came knocking on our door, and they lost their dad 5 years earlier to heart attack. So they're both orphaned. And it was so sad. Like that was like the hardest part, you know. And I asked her way before, did you get vaccinated? Oh, we don't need to get it. And she had underlying issues. She was diabetic already. So, I mean, if you have an underlying issue, it's really important. It's really important. And you don't have to, like, if you don't feel comfortable getting the vaccine, at least ask the questions.
Hmm.
I have this issue. I have high blood pressure. I have asthma. I have this. What do ask your doctor, what do you think? How does the vaccine, how will it help me at this point? Because even if you don't want to get it, it's good to have the answers and just ask the question.
Exactly. And again, folks, vaccines aren't here to well, the COVID vaccine is not here to cure COVID. It's here to protect you and prevent you from having the most emergent of symptoms. Um, it helps you get through COVID a bit easier than it would if you were unprotected. And you can definitely go to vaccines.gov if you have any questions about the vaccine or want vaccine information and you want to find availability near you. Please know that there's the vaccines and there's also booster shots because we need to keep up that ongoing protection with the variants that come in. And Tisha, thank you for sharing your stories. But I'm hearing you're a hospice worker, you're a mother, you walk people into their transition into the different phase of life. How do you stay sane throughout all of this? Like it hurts my heart. Like I had to tear up a little bit, like people wanting you to hold their hand while they pass away, families depending on you to be there, you watching family member after family member pass away. What do you do for your mental health during this time, being the wonderful caretaker that you are to all of these, both stranger and friends and family? How do you stay grounded? How do you stay centered during this time?
I think my ADHD and my OCD help a lot.
Okay, so they're not detriments; they're assets. Could you
No,
explain how that helps you?
no, because I knit, crochet, sew, I cook, I clean. My hands got to be moving. So that is my thing. I paint, I draw. I just took up a class in what you call it, I do pottery, a lot of
Oh
pottery. I
my
throw
gosh.
pottery, stuff like that. And then there's a class I signed up for. I don't know if I want to go and do it, but it's as a bladesmith.
What is that? You make knives?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, it's a class I'm gonna take. So yeah, my hands just gotta be moving. That's it. If my hands are moving, my mind's not wandering and I'm not talking, so that's good.
Okay. So I mean, you're a very creative person, and
Yes.
I've seen your
I just like
paintings.
to make
Yeah.
things all the time.
I
Yes.
have some of your crafts in my home. Like your prints are in my home. I display them first before anything else. Like that is that is so amazing that you're still in the midst of death and walking people towards the end of their lives, that you still find life in your hands in terms of creating, painting, and being around people. Like you're a community in one person. I
Well,
feel.
but it's so necessary. I mean, like that's the outlet because the
Mhm.
other outlets are not good. Whatever the other outlet is, I don't want that. I like this one. So I stick to this one.
I I want I want a set of knives. If you get really good, I want my own set of the cultured queen knives.
Yes.
And before we go, again, I want to thank you so much for your time, and for your stories, for your presence here. Is there a final thought you would like to leave us out of here at Goviki Talk? Coming from you, just any final word that you would want anyone to hear at this moment.
Don't take anything too seriously. Nothing, nothing in life is more serious than love.
Mm.
That's all it is. Because when I was sent home on hospice to die. They told me to go home and get ready, go say goodbye to your sons. And then they realized I was misdiagnosed. And at that very moment when they said go home, my sisters flew down and came and brought me home. And from that very moment, I realized that everything that I ever felt, angry towards this one, hatred towards this, my hate for the Seahawks. Um,
Oh no. Are you a Bang Bang Niner fan?
bang,
You
bang,
just
baby.
look, you just said don't take anything seriously. Let's not
But
take that
anyways,
seriously.
but
But the
anyways,
love for the Niners is
yes,
serious amongst the
it's serious.
people.
It's real. Okay, it's real. But anyways, but really at the end of it all, and dealing with seniors and being at so many end of life, I mean, I've already witnessed about 35 people who have passed on.
Mm.
And that's the greatest advice anyone's ever given me. Don't ever take it seriously.
Oh my
The
gosh. Thank
greatest
you.
the greatest thing honestly is love. No matter how you think about it, whoever begs prays ill will against you, wishes anything upon you, just give them love, shove it in their face, shove it down their throat. Yeah.
Shove love in their face. You hear
There
that,
you
everyone?
go. Yeah. Shove it down their throat. They can take it how they want it. I'm good. Because I'm good with me. And that's all that matters.
Thank you so much, Tisha, for that wonderful last word. And then on social media, they could find you on as Tisha Inc.
Tisha
on.
Ink is my visual art name, but
Okay.
I'm the cultured queen on IG.
On IG. Perfect. And you heard it here, folks. Don't take anything too seriously, but love. And love is a responsibility. So we have to love ourselves enough to get our vaccines, love ourselves enough to stay on top of our boosters, not just to protect ourselves. It's not a it's selfish love. It's a selfless love because we love people around us so that we don't want to be carriers
Ooh,
for things,
ooh, ooh. I want to
especially.
say another thing.
Okay.
Kiss your babies. I think we don't kiss our babies enough.
Well, make sure you're vaccinated before you kiss the babies. But
Yes, but no, really, I think our kids are not being hugged and kissed and really feel love.
yeah,
Kids are feeling babies. They need to feel love. They're not like us that can talk. So
I think I'm a 35-year-old baby because ever since COVID, I've been kind of like touch starved, but I've never been the type of person to be huggy huggy. But when I get around like my friends and family, I'm just like, hey, how are
Yeah.
you? And I never used to be like that. So I think COVID and lockdowns have kind of changed the way I'm interacting. I'm a lot more talkative now too. Like I'll talk to strangers in the grocery store, at the
You,
bank. Exactly. And I don't want to talk to no one. I don't want to talk to
you,
no one.
you
But
hilarious.
if we were to go
Uh,
on, we would extend this show for way longer than it has been. But you know what, folks? Thank you for tuning in to Koviki Talk. This is the Cultured Queen. I am Dacia, AfroTeine, your friendly auntie on the social webs. See me on IG, see me on TikTok. If you see me in real life, say hey. All right? But with that said, we'll see you later, my lovers.
love you, sister.
Bye.